Mounting a hatch on your boat really isn't all that hard, and it's kind of a quick, fun DIY project, and it's more satisfying doing it yourself than paying someone else to do it for you. So come along, let's install a hatch on my boat. And if you like anything you see in this video, check out the description and also the comments section of this video, because I'll put links to all the stuff that I use so you can go and purchase whatever you need to do it on your own. Well, this is the hatch I'm going to be installing. If it doesn't look like the hatch that you're installing, don't worry about it, because it's basically the same process for every single hatch that you're going to install on a boat. Now, this is a 17 by 13 hatch, and what I'm doing with it is I am cutting a hole in the front of my center console because I want to put, I just mounted a trolling motor onto my boat, so I need a place to put the battery for it. So I'm going to be opening up the front of my center console, putting this hatch on it so I can put the battery inside the center console. Um, the main thing I can tell you, or want to tell you, or stress to you before you get started on this is check, recheck, and double check the spot where you are going to cut a hole in your boat to put a hatch in. Now, the best thing you can do is find a spot that you think is the spot where you're going to want it. Measure, you're going to want to measure the overall dimension of this hatch, but you also want to measure the opened dimension of the hatch, which you can see on the back here is where the hatch is going to slide into the hole you're going to cut. So you need to make sure that the hole you cut is the proper size for your hatch, and also the flange that mounts the hatch has no interference on it with your boat. When you find the spot you want the hatch to go and you think you're all set, do whatever you can to look behind where you're going to be drilling and cutting a hole in your boat. That may mean a flashlight, some sort of inspection mirror, holding your cell phone and taking a video and just reaching inside of a compartment and taking a video around where you can. What I did with my boat was I used my GoPro and I stuck it inside the console and I turned it around looking towards me, because that's what I couldn't see underneath there, so I didn't know what was there, where I was going to be drilling and cutting. So when you decide on your spot and you are absolutely sure that this is the spot and you are clear behind it to cut into, then begin marking the area out. What I like to do is use blue painter's tape. I'll take that tape and mark it on the, I'll put the blue painter's tape on the area where I'm going to be cutting the hole. Then I can put the hatch there, or the dimensions for the hatch, and I can trace them out onto that blue tape. The easiest thing to do with it, to use that blue tape, is because that if you make a mistake, you just peel that blue tape right off and put some more blue tape on there again. So we're still at a spot where we can make mistakes and there's no serious damage from it. Once I've got it all marked out with the blue tape and I'm absolutely sure that is where I want my hatch to go, there are a couple different ways to start off your the first holes or cuts. What I prefer to do is use a hole saw, a spade bit for my drill, and I like to cut a hole in the corners of the hatch, um, either diagonal corners or all four corners. And then I can, from there, I can use either a sawzall with a thin blade on it, or I can use a jigsaw that can cut around corners very well. Now, I should have mentioned this first. Make sure before you start cutting into your boat and drilling, put a mask on. You're throwing fiberglass and plastic dust everywhere, and the last thing you want to do is inhale that stuff and have it inside your lungs. So wear a mask, maybe some goggles. I usually don't, but I definitely like wearing a mask when I do this. For this hatch, I decided to mark it out, and then I went and used a spade bit to cut diagonal corners, and I am going to use my jigsaw to cut around uh, the the perimeter of the hatch. Now, the reason why I chose a jigsaw is because it's got a thin blade, and it's a little bit easier to cut radiuses around where the corners are. Um, a Sawzall will cut nice straight lines, and it cuts well, but it doesn't do well around corners, and that's where the jigsaw works much better. Another advantage to using that blue tape is that when you're running the saw around your boat, that blue tape is going to protect your boat from being scratched up by the saw. So now that we've got our hole cut and we know that it is in the right place, because it's too late now, you're going with it no matter what. I like to dry fit the hatch. So I'll take the hatch, stick it in a hole, make sure that all my mounting screws are going to be able to be put in because there's good engagement with the material that's left, and double check that I've got enough room for my hatch to open and it's exactly the way I want it. And once I get that done, now it's time to start securing the hatch to wherever you cut your hole in your boat. What I do a lot of times, because when you drill a screw into your boat, it's going to create a lot of dust and fiberglass. So I don't like to get that stuff into the sealant that we're going to be using in a couple minutes. So I will dry fit it first. I put the hatch in place and I will screw all the screws in to make sure that the hatch is where I want it and all the screws are going to go in. Now, once I have those screws in, I have the holes already drilled for it, so I can back those screws out. And now it's time to use the sealant to make sure this thing doesn't leak. Depending upon your application, it's preferable to use a marine sealant. However, I have also used just regular old hardware store silicone, and it works just fine. Now, this hatch that I'm installing is going to be vertical, and when I'm not using my boat, I have a cover that goes over the front of it. So I'm not too worried about rain getting into it, but I'm still going to make sure that I seal it well. The sealant, I will do 2 beads of sealant around the flange of this hatch. I'm going to do one that's closer to the inside edge of the hatch that's going to meet up against the boat. And then I'll do another bead a little bit farther out around the edge on the opposite side of where the screws are going to go. Once I have those beads of sealant put in there, now I can take the hatch, I can put it back up against where it's going to go and reinstall all the screws around the hatch. When you put the screws in, be careful. Don't ram them in real fast because you don't want to strip that hole out. Make sure the screw is engaged and it's snug, but don't over tighten it. What you'll see sometimes when you put the screws in is that you will get some of that silicone sealant to squirt out around the edges. That's fine. Just take your finger, run your finger along the edge, and you'll smooth that silicone out. And it actually helps because the next step that I like to do is once I get done with that, I know I have 2 layers of silicone inside this hatch, but since this hatch is sitting vertical, I also like to put another layer around the edge and across the top and down the other edge of this hatch. So if any water does hit this hatch, I know for absolutely sure that is not going to get behind that hatch and go in there anywhere. So it's just, the 2 layers that we put on first are probably more than enough. This is just a little bit of extra peace of mind that I like to do. The silicone is cheap, and an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. So that's what I like to do with it. Now, once that's done, I just like to close my hatch and let it set for about a day until all that sealant cures and sets up just fine. Once you're done there and the sealant is cured the next day, your hatch is ready to go. And that's all there is to it. It's the same steps if you're going to mount a hatch flat on your boat, or if you're mounting it vertical somewhere, or if it is a round hatch or a rectangular hatch like this one is. It's all the same process. So from beginning to end, you can probably mount a hatch like this in about a total of maybe an hour. It's really not that hard. And it's doing it yourself is better than paying someone else to do it. Just make sure you take your time in the beginning, make absolutely sure that where you're going to be drilling is where you want that hole. So now you've got a new hatch in your boat, you're ready for the summer. Like I say to everybody in my videos, I wish you nothing but tight lines and short blood trails. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video.